Welcome to episode 53, listeners. My name's Stephen, and we have Bill and Craig with us from Nuticulture, and
Hello.
we'll be talking about systems, so listen in. Welcome, Bill and Craig.
Hello, Stephen.
How are you?
Yeah, pretty good. And yourself?
I'm good. Well, we're missing Thomas today. Our other shop's gone really busy, so he's staying over there, and you have the pleasure of just me.
It's going to be a lot quieter then.
Yeah. So, for the people that don't know, which I imagine is probably not that many, tell us a little bit about the history of Nutriculture. When did you start, and what do you do?
Well, we started in 1976, and I think it's safe to say that from that point we've become the leading manufacturer of hydroponic systems in the UK. That started with John Molyneux, who's now our chairman, way back when. And what he wanted to do was adopt the principles that commercial horticulturalists were using and bring it to the hobbyist market. Now, he had a few problems in doing that, so being the stubborn guy that he is and having a lot of drive and ambition, having taken it to people and said, can you make these things? And they said no. He decided he was going to do it all himself. So he set up a factory, he got the products going, got into a standard where he was happy with that they could be sold commercially, and we've gone on from strength to strength. So we've developed a number of hydroponic products between then and now. You know, the starter was the NFT, which we'll touch upon in this podcast, and it goes right through to our newest product range, which is the Rush recirculating deep water culture product. And then in between, we've had the acquisition of Direct Gardening Supplies in 2011, I think
That's right, yeah.
And, you know, in between, we've developed other products, we've taken on more product lines. So Nutriculture, as a manufacturer of systems, have gone from strength to strength in those, well, be 40 years next year. And also been able to develop our product range as well to provide complementary products. So we like to see the whole industry holistically, and we feel like we do a pretty good job of it.
You're pretty good at this, aren't you? I don't think there was.
Well, he's a marketing manager.
Yeah,
I don't think there wasn't one aim or there wasn't a stuff. That was fantastic.
I like the sound of my own voice. That's the problem.
One of the things that happened back in the day was that because we were producing grow systems, and that's what we were selling out to shops, the early shops in the hydroponic industry, these shops started asking us, could we get other products as well? So things like Grodan. So initially people were trying to buy the Grodan themselves, and people asked us the question because we were becoming a big player, if you like, or a bigger manufacturer within the industry. People came to us and said, you know, we need to get these other products, we want to buy other products from you. And that sort of opened the door for us to become a wholesaler as well in the early days. And as Craig mentioned then, it's led to where we are now. And I appreciate some of your listeners won't realise us as a wholesaler, but they'll certainly know the products that we sell as a wholesaler, things like Rhino and Gavita, Plant Magic, House and Garden, which we might touch on later, Green Power, and all these products.
Yeah, so you mentioned there the Grodan, and you've built these systems, let's say the NFT, and the Grodan just happen to complement the NFT
exactly
fantastically.
Yes.
So it's a really good relationship to have.
That's
to put
right.
them together.
And, you know, as I mentioned, that's the first product that we developed as a company nearly 40 years ago, but it's still one of the most popular, and that's just because it gets good results. I think one of the biggest reasons that is because it's fairly simple. I mean, some of your listeners, if they're not familiar with what NFT is, it's basically putting your plants onto a tank and top tray with the Grodan, with the roots. The roots have to be plentiful in the Grodan, and a small sort of trickle, a small sort of stream just gently flowing over the roots is providing all the nutrition the plant needs. It's giving it access to oxygen, and then it's flowing back into the reservoir and being recycled. And that's just going to happen again and again, continuously throughout the day, 24/7. And what we find is that you're getting 3 times the yield out of that system, you know, if you were comparing it to pots and soil growing.
Yeah. Some of the older listeners will definitely be able to associate with the NFT, because it was one of the first systems that pretty much I'd say every grower.
Mm-hmm.
Every grower that's, let's say, been doing this for 15, 20 years will have definitely used an NFT, because it was probably the main system back in the day, wasn't it?
It was the first and the main one. A little interesting story about the NFT and how it was developed was that John, the chairman, he was working at John Moores University on his thesis back in early 70s. And he was doing a thesis on roots and root development, and wanted to show the roots of a plant and how they would grow. And there was no available technique to see that, because obviously plants were rooted in soil, so there's no way of actually examining the roots themselves and seeing them and being able to comment on them as they grew. So that's where the NFT originally developed from John wanting to know what was happening in the roots. And then he was able to then put a commercial spin on that and use it for developing and growing the plants that we love today.
Yeah, so the NFT, born out of science.
Born out of science, born out of research, yes.
Yeah, exactly, which is something that resonates with you guys here at NPK.
Absolutely. I went off on a little bit of a mad one last week, talking about the science and proper testing, and it's something that we really need to push home and hit home with everybody in our industry is proper scientific testing. So exactly spot on. We are heavily science based.
That's it.
Well, we go for the results.
Yeah.
We go for the result. So on the NFT, we've got two versions. We've got the grow tanks and we've got the multi-ducts. So the grow tanks are a single channel, smaller system, and the multi-ducts are for a bigger user. If you go to our website, our Nut Systems website,
nutsystems.co.uk,
you'll see some videos about all the products. But as Craig mentioned earlier, NFT is a burr-rooted technique. There's no media other than the media that you start off the plant in. So usually grow down cube, but you can use soil as well if you so wished. Tips, really, you need to make sure that grow down cube or the media is well rooted out before you transplant it into the system. That's a common mistake people make. So you need to make sure you've got a good, healthy root ball, root mass before you transplant it into the system. The nice thing about grow tanks is they're only 20 centimetres in height, so you've got plenty of height to play with above the system. And you always need to have a continuous supply of water, so your water needs to be moving constantly.
Yeah.
Some people I've heard in the past turn it off at night. Well, you should never turn it off.
No.
Always keep your pump flowing. Just as a side point, we use newer pumps in all our systems. One of the things we have to be very careful about being a systems manufacturer is the reliability of those systems. And we find that newer, which are manufactured in Italy, we laugh and call them the Rolls-Royce of pumps, but they are, because we get very few returns back. So your listeners can take comfort in the fact that these pumps will not let them down. So you need to have your nutrient solution moving over the roots all the time.
Yeah, just to pick you up on that. So how long's the NFT been going for? Just remind our listeners.
Since 1976.
1976.
The grow tanks, yeah.
And since then, obviously, you've been using pumps to circulate the
That's
water.
right.
So you've had experience from 1976 all the way up until 2015. So just let's put systems aside for 2 seconds. If you need pumps, then I'd say Nutriculture is probably the number one place to go for your pumps, because they've had that 30 odd years of experience of taking pumps, using them, finding out which ones aren't good, which ones are the best. They've finally come to this newer, which is NEWA.
NEWA.
If you want to look that up. So if you're just looking for a pump, no matter what system you're in, to recirculate your water, then check out the Nutriculture newer pumps. They're going to be probably industry top ones, in my opinion.
Thanks very much, Steve. So one of the other things that people must do, they do get with the newer pump, is they get an air tube as well. Now, you must have that connected to when you're using an NFT system, because what that's going to do is oxygenate the water that's getting pumped back through to the top tray, and it's giving instantaneous oxygen to the water. So you're not just relying on the top layer of the film of the water breaking, you're actually getting air into your water straight away. So one of the reasons that NFT is so successful is because you do have this constant access to air and oxygen within the water.
So there's 3 points of oxygenation, isn't there? There's the thin film, which is having instant contact with oxygenated air.
Right.
You said your pump has got a siphon built into it to oxygenate as it pumps onto the tray. And you've also got, on the NFT, basically the waterfall effect at the end.
That's right.
Which is increasing the dissolved oxygen within the water as well.
Just another little tip for your listeners as well. If they cut the spreader mat a little bit longer and allow it to dangle into the water at the end, it gets rid of any noise. So any trickling noise that you're...
That's top tip. I
Yeah.
like that one, yeah. Very good.
So just quickly spread them out a bit longer and dangle it over the edge so it's going into the reservoir.
So it could be called the NNFT, the Ninja Nutrient Film Technique.
Yeah, we'll have that, yeah.
No, we're not changing. It's been in 40 years.
Can't have John rewriting his book now after 40 years.
And look who's turned up. I knew he couldn't resist coming and ganging up on me. Hey, look, turning up at late. Thomas is coming in, so we'll be speaking to him in a minute and getting his opinions on the systems. Things are about to get a lot louder. Basically, what I was saying to Bill and Craig just before we started our podcast was we're not going to go into too much detail on each system because very kindly Bill and Craig are going to be coming back after the new year, and we're going to be doing probably a 5 or 6 series on Nutriculture, and then we're going to go into a lot of detail on the NFT, the Wilmer, the flow grows, the big one on the IWS. So if you're feeling like we're not giving you too much information on each system, don't worry. Stay tuned in for after the Christmas and the New Year, and we'll be doing a nice Nutriculture podcast series going in depth on all of those. And we have a special guest with us. Welcome back.
Oh, hello.
How are you?
Yeah, I bothered to turn up today for today's podcast. How are you, people? I just thought I'd pop in and say hello and see what's going on.
Good to have my partner back.
How's the podcast going with
It's going
Nutriculture?
well so far. Some top tips from Bill and Craig.
Top tips, eh? We
Yeah.
love some top tips.
He mentioned about the nutrient film technique, just having the white spreader mat. Don't cut it short on the waterfall at the end, as I call it. Keep it a little bit longer, and it's going to turn it into a ninja nutrient film technique, so it makes no noise when it trickles
It's
in.
very nice indeed. Top tip.
It's a good one, that, isn't it? Yeah. Do you want to move on to the Wilmer system, or is there anything else that you'd like to mention on the NFT?
The only thing I'd like to mention, just for your listeners' benefit, is the sizes of plants that you can go from on the NFT, because I don't think people always understand how big you can go with your
They
plants.
don't. I know that's a big thing. That's the main reason for the podcast, and obviously to get you guys out here today, because I know you guys, you do shows and we go to shows, and I still go to shows, and the displays are amazing, but I can see the emptiness in the customer's mind thinking, okay, they're standing before a system, but a lot of people are different in the way that they learn and stuff like that and take on information, and some people feel a bit intimidated by maybe going up to somebody and saying, okay, I know nothing, can you tell me something? A lot of people are a bit afraid of that, so that's why we decided to do podcast as a bit of a porthole for those people that can think, okay, we can go onto the podcast and these guys can explain the systems yourselves a bit more in detail, and then if they are a bit shy or whatever and they were embarrassed in shows or whatnot, they can come down to the superstore, and by all means you can have ourselves or one of the Nutriculture team happily go through the systems as well.
That's it, and we're always on hand to give anybody advice, on any of the systems, because we understand, having been to the shows, that people, they don't always take things in first time, because it's not just as straightforward as somebody saying it to you. You understand that, you go away and you do it, and even if they do that, there might be something that they're not quite sure on. So,
to be honest with you as well, I actually fall into that category myself personally, because I know I've been going to shows for a few years now, 3-4 years, and I've went to shows and I've looked I've walked around with my eyes open, shall I say, and I've seen some things, but then it's maybe not till a year later on till somebody's actually put it under my nose, so to speak, or I've had a little go of it, and then I thought, I've seen that a year ago, why didn't I bother with that then? It's because me lack of knowledge and a bit of, is it a bit of fear? Because you sort of entering into the unknown world of new stuff, which can be daunting for some people. But what I always seem to find is when I do this new thing, I think, why didn't I do that 6 to 12 months ago?
We wish more people were like you, Thomas. I mean, it's a results.
God help the planet if there's more people like me.
It's a results-driven business, and people don't want to change a winning formula.
Exactly. That's why I think that's key to us as well at the store. When people come in and they ask our advice, and we say, well, you could try this or try that, we tend to say to them, do not go home and change your whole growing sketch, what you like and enjoy and are safe with. Go home and change a small, maybe 1 or 2 pot, and then it won't affect your overall results, but what it will do is give you that knowledge for the future, so you can think, hang on a minute, I done really well off that, I didn't have to use half as much of nutrients or light or whatever it may be that you found out to be good, and then you've improved your system just by doing that, and then you can implement that on your next crop or whatever it is.
It's perfect advice. Perfect advice, really. You know, we'd always recommend, and a lot of the systems we're talking about today are for the small hobbyist enthusiast. You know,
that's what I've noticed about you guys lately. You have started catering for the person who only has a very small space in the room, or limited resources, or not enough money in the budget, you know. And you guys are really, that's what I mentioned to Stephen in a separate conversation about this. I've noticed that about you guys. You're really homed in on the person who hasn't got a big budget. You actually care about them as well. And it's not just 100 pot systems that need a degree to work. You've actually got a few single pot systems that I've noticed.
Well, our ethos really from the start, and Craig touched on it at the beginning, was that John, the chairman, wanted to give our users, our growers in the UK, he wanted to give them commercial techniques, but at a hobbyist level. Yeah. And that was how the company was sort of founded. That's what we wanted to do. A lot of all the veg that you have from the supermarkets these days, all grown hydroponically in big commercial systems. Yeah. But we wanted to be able to give those same techniques to just me and you, and we can grow some chilies in the back garden or whatever. And, you know, that's why the systems are small and usable, and get great results.
Well, I'm going to tell you a little sneaky thing. I was up at Nutriculture the other week. I come in and terrorise your staff, as I always do, Bill. And I had a sneaky little look in your polytunnel. It's a bit late in the season. However, you know I like to go...
Was anything still alive?
Everything was still alive. And you had a few things on in systems in your polytunnel. And some of your stuff you had growing there was phenomenal, I must admit. I think you got jalapenos. Jalapenos.
Yeah.
And they some of them like a foot long.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's October. So that means they shouldn't even be alive still, really, technically. And they were thriving. And I can't remember off the top of my head, you guys might know, if you've been in there lately, what system. But one I did know, because we got it in our shop. And it is the one we have on display in the tent that yourself come and set the tent up with.
Rush with Chris.
The Rush with Chris.
Yeah.
Well, I've noticed in your polytunnel, you've got a Rush system which is absolutely thriving.
Yeah.
So we're going to put one in our polytunnel as well, because I'm jealous.
That's it. I'm glad you got the chance to spot it, because it's been
I was
doing
very
really well.
impressed by your polytunnel as well. Your tomatoes that you've got strung up to the ceiling. They're also in... what system? I know you had a couple of things in a couple of Wilmers. You had the Rush system.
One of the other ones that you would have seen is our capillary action system, the quad grow.
Yeah, I did. Yeah,
so
I did.
No electricity.
Yeah.
It's just using a basic capillary action to take the water from the reservoir into the pot, and you've seen the results.
The reason why I actually mentioned that as well, Bill, because I'm constantly trying to hit home a point when I spoke about that, is because I'm trying to make aware of, because we're on the allotments, we are heavily involved with allotments and various projects, from being in the Liverpool Echo with it and stuff like that. So we're well established on our allotment now, which is Merseyview. But what we see when we go on the allotment is how much the allotment growers don't realise hydroponics really fits. It is designed for their life to be a hell of a lot easier and more controllable. And we've started putting, the AutoPots down there, and a flow. We had the capillary matting as well down there as well. And we're trying to basically get these people to understand that they can have some really good results, because our results inside our polytunnel, due to the gravity-fed systems that are available, the AutoPots and all of the other NFT systems and stuff, what you can actually get to use in your polytunnel, give you some cracking results. And a lot of the people on the allotments aren't really aware of this, and that's what we're constantly homing in on right now.
That's it. And I think you're 100% right. I mean, I was in a little show August time, and the guys that came along to that were sort of like, your people that go to the Harrogate show. Yeah. And they were saying the reasons they get, the massive pumpkins and all these type of different things is because they're using hydroponic techniques. The courgettes are bigger and everything else. They've adopted that. And they're trying to keep hold of it in a little way so the competition doesn't know. But
well, we've actually got a tactical. I'm going to release one of our tactics for next year, 2016. We are going to be at every mainstream gardening horticultural show, for our allotment show in the UK, because we are going to be there promoting hydroponics within allotments. Don't know whether if you guys would like to team up with us to make an attack on this front, because knowledge is key, and sadly allotment people don't see hydroponics as something that caters for them.
No, I think quite a lot of them just aren't aware of what it is in
They're
general.
not, and we need to make them aware and let them know what's out there.
Well, that's, we'd be happy to partner on that to make sure that word's getting out there. Yeah, 100%.
Well, Betty on the allotment, who's in her late 60s, bending down, breaking through all that horrible clay soil, spending 2 or 3 hours an evening on the allotment to get here pumpkins. And what do? We rock up, 5 young lads, and spend half an hour sometimes setting up systems, and bang, 2-3 months later you've got lovely sized pumpkins. We
had 5 pumpkins ready last week, didn't we?
Quite early.
How much water were the pumpkins taking? Because they do take a lot of water. The pumpkin,
a lot of water, probably 20 litres a day.
Yeah.
What we done was we cleverly set up a capillary action in the bed,
right,
which was very, very good. And our allotment must be kicking themselves thinking, how have these young, immature growers come onto this site and then produced what they did? Because we never planted anything. Because what they don't know is we have our tents in our store and we're propagating and we're growing and we're adding extra bits and bobs. So everybody on our allotment was planted all the corns and all the beans and everything, and we're still sitting there with empty beds. And then one Sunday we turn up with a van full of clones and cuttings and small plants and mature plants, and we plant this mass
under the cover of darkness.
Yes, under the cover of darkness, getting rid of any evidence whatsoever. And then on Monday morning we have this amazing allotment. Now our viewers and listeners have been watching Facebook. We done a pea tower, which was we planted it later than everybody else, and it was absolutely phenomenal. It become a pea tower to heaven. It was Jack and the pea store.
I have to be honest, I have to give you the entire credit for that, because we have our little bits and bobs on the allotment
and arguments.
But you clean the centre bed, put up your 6, 7, 8 pieces.
And I've done a nice collection. I've done a collection of edible peas and
just lovely floral
display peas,
like beautiful flowers.
And it was just amazing when it went off. I built a pyramid in the centre of the bed with 5-foot bamboo canes, and then in the corner of the bed, in each corner, I built another similar corner pyramid, and I planted each all around, and I planted at least 50 plants. Oh my God, it was manic. And it actually dropped down off the bed, which we built off old railway sleepers, and it fell on the floor and went maybe 12-15 foot along the floor with just loads of purple and orange flowers, and it was just spectacular. And I even turned around and thought, are we on the right plot here? Did we actually do this? But yeah, so that shows you what early propagation and how we can be Mother Nature in a sense with various tenting and hydroponic systems. You can get ahead of the game basically.
Well, that's it. I mean, you mentioned propagation, and we do the extreme propagator, and the whole thing is just moving the process on quicker. Like 8 to 10 days you got cuttings ready to go into a system or wherever you might want them to go, and it's just moving things on that extra few weeks.
And also not just what I've noticed is the success rate is really high, so it's something that's very daunting for allotment growers as well. Mother Nature in the UK has a very strange set of ways, from crazy rainfall to no rainfall to sun to extreme cold to ice and snow.
And that's in one day.
All in one day. So I see a lot of allotment growers like this year. I've asked a couple, how did you do this year? Oh, not so good. And we're like, well, come and have some of our stuff. We've got loads here. So basically, it can accelerate the growth, but it really gives you a better result in the end.
Yeah, that's 100% the case. We've been testing this for years, and we've improved the product to the point where it is 99% proof. It's going to get you the right thing.
Yeah.
You mentioned the extreme propagator actually, and we've got a list in front of us because this podcast was actually meant for Coventry, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
You were absolutely rammed at the Coventry show. We obviously, the listeners know because of the amount of podcasts that we've done. So this is actually our Coventry show brought back to Liverpool, isn't it? And that you've brought up the extreme system, and to be honest, I'm going to kick myself because I didn't write it down as one of the things to talk about. But I am kicking myself because it's a fantastic system. I can't believe I didn't write it down to talk about.
That's because you put down grow systems and extreme falls into propagation, which is explaining. Let's talk about it.
So, I'll start with the extreme propagator. It's a highly oxygenated water spraying up at the base of the plants. You can have different types of net pots. You can use pebbles or not jiffies.
So it's versatile. It can be used in different ways.
I personally really like it. We use it quite often in our shop to get everything of ours started. Tell us a bit more about the technical details of it.
So, at its most basic form, it's almost like a mini aeroponic system. So it's providing a lot of air to your cuttings. It's being sprayed directly from the bottom of the tank, which you fill, with water. It's spraying directly underneath, so it's just helping the cuttings to just develop those roots just slowly and gradually until they become healthy enough. And over the space of the first couple of days, you probably see a very small amount of growth, and then probably between 5 and 8 days, that's when it's really starting to take root and the cuttings are coming on. It's got a humidity dome on it, so it's creating the right environment over the course of those 8 to 10 days, and probably a little bit later if you want to move them on a little bit further. You're moving the humidity vents open. It's been fully developed, so you're putting sunblaster lights on the top of it, so it's got specific grooves. And what that's doing is it's providing it with a consistent set of light that's not too intense for the cutting. It's just the right amount to just bring it on. So that's what we've done to develop it. And ultimately, we find that anybody that is using it, they're not just developing quicker plants, but more healthy ones, like we've said.
Yeah. Did you have something to say just before?
I was just going to say that in development of that system, we've recently changed the supports for the plants internally. So originally it used to have a Corex support where you put your pots in. Now that's a plastic moulded support. We do a 12, a 20, a 40 and a 120 size Propagator.
I was going to say to you, what sizes do you do? So, even though I do know, because I have personally used the system.
And it's a great way to get fast roots. You will see roots developing between 6 to 10 days on the system. As with anything new, you don't need to have any nutrients in it at all. When you're starting them off, you just started off with simple water. Yeah. It's got butterfly vents on the top of it, so you can harden off your plants as they're growing in there before they become hardy enough to transplant as well. Yeah. And it's a great way to move into one of our other systems. So it's the same technique as Craig alluded to before, as we're using our Amazon system, so you can move it directly into that.
It's ideal for anything the way you're using a burr-rooted technique, so it'll move into anything that you might use on deep water culture, which I think we're going to touch on a bit later. And so we've got systems that you can take the product the cutting straight from the extreme, move them over, and it's going to do it's not going to damage the plant in any way, shape or form. They can go straight into something like clay pebbles, so the roots are getting all the oxygen that they're ever going to need, and it's giving them that environment that they want to be in. So it's plenty of oxygen, like I said, plenty of access to the nutrients that are going to be provided to them, and ultimately a healthier plant.
Have you got any top tips for the customers that use Extreme with regards to how often do they have the water on constantly, or
constantly on? Tips, here we go. Once the roots begin to show, open the vents. That's one of the biggest tips that you can do it. You can use rooting gels and powders with it as well if you so wish, so you can dip them before you move them into there. And anything is absorbed immediately, so you can use them. It won't be washed away, so you can use a rooting gel as well if you so wish. You can transplant into soil or cocoa. You can use it straight into hydro, into NFT or Amazon. And again, like NFT and Amazon, you're not getting rid of any waste media, because there is no media. So it's good for you guys who, they don't want to get rid of stuff at the end of the grow. They don't want to get rid of bags of cocoa or bags of soil. There's no media involved in it at all.
Yeah. I really rate the Extreme very well. Bill kindly gave us one, as you know. We had one on display for a long time in the store, and I had clones. I was constantly developing clones, and the success rate was phenomenal, to be honest with you. And that really showed a lot of the customers on how you can develop clones in a faster, more safer, accurate way, because a lot of people who would do clones tell me about a 50% success rate, which is very poor. It is a bit of luck that they're surviving, to be honest. That sounds to me. With the Extreme, there was no issues whatsoever. They were just really healthy though. And after, when you were saying between 7 and 9 days, there'll be a few roots. What I've noticed from 7 to 9 days is there's a massive root, and these roots are substantially very strong as well.
Yeah.
I rate the Extreme very well. I've used 105 site, was it?
That was the
Well,
original
back in the
one.
day,
That was the
yeah.
original one. So
showing
might
me
not.
age here.
Yeah, I'm showing my age here. Sorry, because I haven't used them for a while, to be honest. But the 105 sighter that I was using for quite a while was phenomenal. It was. But Bill actually mentioned before about some upgrades to the system. He mentioned about the Corex,
Yes.
which sounds really good, because one thing I did notice when I was using the 105 sighter, this was a couple of years ago now, Bill, it was bending a little bit in the middle.
That was the reason for doing it.
It wasn't a big
Yeah.
drama, but I was really pleased when you said to me then, because that was something that I thought
Yeah.
about. So really glad that you have done that as well. I don't know. What I also found out as well, you know, when it was in the winter time and the rooms were getting really cold, what I found was the water could get a bit cold. So what I found myself was putting a little heater.
Yes.
But I actually got the heater from you guys. You supplied the heaters as well.
Well, we talked about newer pumps earlier, and Newer do a range of heaters as well.
Yeah.
And they do some unbreakable heaters.
Yeah.
So it's great to get one of those in a good temperature, 18 degrees. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, the last point that I'd like to make is we've touched on as well on how heavily involved in science Nutriculture are. Obviously, how involved we are.
Yeah.
If any companies out there are looking to do testing root stems, we did touch on this last week as well. But
Just
if any companies are looking to test their root stimulators, then the Extreme Propagator, in my opinion, is going to be the best way to go. Easily available, it creates great conditions for you to put your plants in, and also if you have 5 Extreme Propagators within a tent, you have got 5 identical environments.
What about if we redone a root test, but accurately done one, correctly done a root test with 5 root stimulators within an Extreme Propagator?
Well, maybe if I design the experiments,
Yeah, you'd have to, because you're the only one I believe is scientifically qualified to do that.
and
I concur with
100%,
that.
100%.
and we ask Nutriculture to maybe use 5 Extreme Propagators at the Nutriculture
Well, we could
site.
we could use one. I know, yeah, because we'd have to use 5 at the same time.
Yeah.
Well, we could do it on 20 sites, 520.
Yeah,
It doesn't have to be 100.
no, 520 sites. We'll pick at random out of a box 5 root stems, so there's no bias in what we're picking, and then we'll give them a test. And
Like a Pepsi challenge.
Yes, just like that.
Are you
Cogs
up
are available.
for that?
No, that sounds
we'll be
superb.
fine with
yeah,
it.
no,
Yeah.
that's
Is that okay?
And
Good.
use benefits as well. We'll probably do this around January time. Just
Yeah, we
before
won't
the
be able to do it
Nutriculture
straight to
podcast.
yeah.
No, January's probably about the right time anyway for customers.
And
as
then
well.
you've got a nice set of 100 plants there ready to
Ready to go in our polytunnel again.
Right, before we get carried away, because we are going in depth on these systems, and that's what the January podcast is going to be about. Let's sort of have a little glance over some of the other systems you do. Wilmer, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, trying to keep it brief, the Wilmer is your personal grower. That's how we've always pitched it to our customers. What we're trying to do is get people away from just coming in once a day, hand watering and suffocating the plants. The thing with the Wilmer is that's going to do all the feeding for you. Our ethos is little and often, so you can do it as many times as you want during the day and break the feeds down. As soon as you go in and just dump a load of water on a plant, it's not good for it.
No.
So with the Wilmer system, you can break that away. You can go off and go to the pub now instead of spending time looking after your plants. So the Wilmer was always developed to move people away from pots into a system, but keeping the structure of pots, keeping the safety of pots, if you like.
Yeah.
So that was the reason for the Wilmer.
So would you say it's like a bit of a first step into the hydro?
Yeah,
I
it's
think
probably
it's
moving
automated
people
system.
on.
It's a good first step,
Yeah.
yes. I mean, it's a very good first step, and it's probably our most popular and well-known brand of system, alongside the grow tanks and the multi-ducts.
Yeah.
So if you're ever moving, if you ever want to try hydroponics and active hydroponics, a Wilmer's a great way to go into it. You can use a Wilmer. You can use any media with a Wilmer. So you can grow in soil. You can grow in cocoa. You can grow down mapito, whatever pebbles. So it's whatever a customer is already using. You can use a
caters
Wilmer.
for them.
It caters
Yeah.
for everybody. Yes.
And I always think if you're working odd hours or something like that, you can set it up in time so it's feeding the plants when they want to be fed, not when you can get
Yeah.
to
That's
it.
a very good point.
Very good point, because growing a plant is about the plant. It's not about whether you've got to go and drop the kids off at school or pick the wife up or drop the nan off or go to the pub. The plant doesn't give
Two
hoots regarding any of that. The plant cares about when it gets its feed and stuff like that. So
these two are a bit too good, though. I've got these questions in my mind, ready to ask them, and they're answering them before I get to ask them.
Well, I mean, the other thing with the Wilmer is it's the sizes. So you can start as low as a 1 metre by 1 metre grow space and have a nice 4-pot working in there with 6 or 11 litre pots in there, 4 pots of that. Then you can take it all the way up to a 2.4 by 1.2 metre tent and have 8 pots in there, but growing big plants in 25 litre pots.
Yeah.
So again, it's very scalable.
You could even say it's modular as well, with the types of drippers that you can use on it.
Well, there's two types of
flood and arrow.
drippers. You've got a flood dripper and you've got the
arrow dripper.
arrow dripper.
these the blue and the black one.
That's
the
right.
ones, yeah.
So your flood dripper's going to run constantly. So
Yeah.
that's perfect for pebbles.
Yeah.
So if you're growing in pebbles, you've got the running straight away. Then you've got the arrow dripper, which is 2 litres per hour.
Yeah.
And then if you've got that then on a timer of maybe 15-minute segments, you can work out that it's going to get half a litre in that period of time that you've got your timer set to on your Wilmer.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's been updated recently as well, the Wilmer. I mean, we mentioned before that a lot of people will know it. You know, we've changed it over the sort of past 12 months, so a couple of nice little features. There's little mixing taps, so you get that running, pumping your nutrient round before you set it off going. Just means that you're not just flooding it with a load of undiluted nutrients and potentially damaging your plants. Yeah, and the spacing, you know, we've increased that. So anybody that's perhaps had a Wilmer in the past and felt that the pots was too close, you know, we've given people like a little bit of extra space to grow.
So basically, you've evolved the system
Yeah.
to cater for the customer's needs.
Yeah. Well, that's what we like to do.
Or the
is-
plant's needs, sorry.
the plants needs. Yes.
Well, I mean, I'd say on the Wilmer was made for the customer,
For the customer.
for the guy growing, because it was to try and take a bit of that headache of hand watering away from him, and that's where it came from. The plants will still perform as well as ever, but it gives you a bit more opportunity to go and do things that you want to do.
Yeah. Basically, what we're looking to see is, can we get a hydroponic automated system at a customer's place for less than £100? Do you think that's achievable, Stephen?
Definitely.
I think it is as well.
Yeah.
I think we can put together maybe a little kit,
Yeah.
a starter kit.
Yeah.
Definitely be using some of Nutriculture's systems.
Yeah.
Some of the feeds that came up on last week and the nutrient price comparison test. And I think we can probably put together a good kit for less
Well,
than
what I will
£150.
do, Stephen, I'll let you have a little look at the figures and whatnot, but I'll gladly support if we do a little package. So we have a Nutriculture system and we'll give them a discounted rated feeds with it. So they're getting a little package all together.
Yeah,
so they
we'll
can
make
get going.
it as accessible as possible.
Yeah.
So getting these allotment growers and the people,
Yeah,
I think it's all science.
so it's nice and affordable and not a million miles away for everybody. That's what we're going to do from this podcast.
Okay,
All right.
excellent.
Yeah.
Next up, our favourite, or my favourite anyway, deep horticulture. We won't spend too much on it because I could do 2 hours on this thing.
Easy, 200 hours.
But DWC, deep horticulture, you provide the bubble box and the Oxypot. Tell us who's this for and what are they using it?
Well, it's really for a range of growers. If we're talking about the Oxypot, that goes from a 1 through to a 4 plant system. I always think if you're interested in deep horticulture but you're currently doing a grow, a single or a double Oxypot, that's the ideal way to get into it. You just run it alongside.
Dip
just
your
see
toe
what
in the
it does.
water.
Exactly. And that's what we try and encourage because, you know, looking at your website and you know, your ethos and things like that, it's about pushing forward and really trying things and what you want to do. I always think, why are people moaning if they're not willing to try? And that's what I would do with those type of products.
Yeah.
An Oxypot single and XL, run it alongside. Basically, what's happening is you've got a reservoir, a tank full of water and nutrients that's bubbling away, and your roots are hanging from a net pot into that water. It's oxygenating it. The plant's roots are drawing the feed when they need it, and it's growing nice and healthy. And
At an accelerated rate.
Massively. So you were talking about our polytunnel before. You know, those chilies that are in there, you know, there's those in the rush, that's deep horticulture. We've got other ones as well. They're in the Oxypots and they've grown in, you know, a very short space of time. You know, we're talking, we must have accelerated the growth by anywhere up to a month. Really, we did, because it was...
I would agree with that.
It's you know, we were surprised ourselves at times by how quickly they came on. Because the guy that put them in there, he was doing some at home in pots and soil, And then he wanted to do that trial at the polytunnel and just see the difference in progress. And he was shocked, to be honest. And we're still getting chilies off it now.
Well, you
into
guys
the season.
kindly last week gave me and my friend a
Clear.
And the reason for that is because we're going to time lapse it, and we're going to show everybody how accelerated the growth is, particularly in one of your systems. So thank you once again, because you know what I'm like, Bill. I'm always having some piece of equipment or stuff somewhere, but Bill is always
It's
been
because
very supportive.
it's because he hangs me upside down with my ankles in the office.
That's just for your skill.
Yeah. The thing with the Oxypot is, as you know, Thomas and Steve, growing goes in fashions.
Yeah.
And over the last 12 months, 18 months, we've seen a real fashion developing for DWC, and it's allowed us to extend our offering to it. We've always had a single Oxypot, and we've always had DWC in a modular system, but we never really had it as a system for the hobbyist other than the single pot. So we knew a lot of people, certainly in the Birmingham area, were manufacturing DIY systems, and us being a systems manufacturer, thought, well, we can give them a much more polished product with exactly as good results, if not better, in a nice package. So we can now sell to the shops, and hopefully the customers can buy an Oxypot XL, which will do either 1 or 2 plants, for around about £50 to £55.
Yeah.
And that will come with an air kit, that'll come with your air stones, that'll come with your reservoir, which is a 60-litre reservoir. So we've got plenty of reservoir and plenty of nutrients in there to manage your nutrient solution as well. And it's also got some nice features where you can flip the lid upside down. So when a plant's vegging, you can have it with less water in. And as the plant starts to grow and go into flowering, you can flip the lid back over and take use of the full 60-litre reservoir. And then from that, then we introduced the Oxypot 4, which is a 100-litre reservoir, and that can obviously do 4 plants. Yeah. Some people are actually just using the central hole on it to do 1 plant and do a nice big plant, which is great. I mean, one of the things I love about the industry is that people will take a system and they'll go away and do something with it themselves.
That's what I love as well, it's innovation.
They'll pimp our systems, which is great. You know, we're all for that. You know,
we're currently doing that right now. We're currently doing that with one of yours. That one that you gave us at the moment, so we've made a few tweaks, to say the least, some accelerated air growth, some big pumps, and we'll see how that...
And one that you've always been on board with, and you had it for a while now, is the BudBox, which was the original effort into coming into that, and you've done some fantastic chilies.
Yeah, the Carolina Reaper.
Yeah, so just for the listeners who don't know, Bill, once again, gave us another system, which we put in the shop and terrorised the backside out of it, and it performed very, very well. We ordered some Carolina Reaper chilies, which rate what on the Scholes rating, Steve?
One off the top of my head, 1.2, 1.3 million Scoville. The hottest chili in the world.
Hottest chili. We were only allowed 1 pack of seeds with 5 seeds. Yeah. We propagated and ended up putting in the extreme for a small period of time, I think 2 weeks. Because the roots were growing that violent, we had to up it and out it. So then we got it into the BudBox, and the plant ended up filling the whole 2.4 by 1.2. Got that big, I decided to cut it down and take the BudBox out into the new unit that I'd just leased next door, and just hung a light from the ceiling and let this plant become a tree. Then another 3-4 months later, we ended up having hundreds and hundreds of chilies, which we picked.
And hundreds of people off work the next day as well.
Yeah, because we fed them all to them. But the BudBox was phenomenal.
It was. To be honest, it was a hard plant to grow, because it might be right in calling it a super gene. It's been crossed and crossed. It
wasn't an easy plant. It was very susceptible to...
It took us about 6 months, didn't it?
Yeah. It kept on getting little issues with pests and stuff like that, because the plant's a very weak plant. So we had to constantly keep an eye on it and treat it effectively, which it did. It took on board everything. See, that's the good thing is with DWC. Any implements that you put in the tanker, quick, fast time in working. So we were constantly on this plant, and it was just a joy for us ourselves to grow in the shop. And everybody used to walk in, used to go, "Oh my God, what on earth is that thing with these evil-looking chilies all curled and shriveled up with like little devil's tails on? And it was phenomenal. And the thing that I did like the most about that, and I think it was key to making the plant as big as it was the actual base tray that we had, because it was a square, big, large base tray, which allowed us to put a lot of media inside, if you remember rightly, where any of our own personal trays that we use are half the size of that. So it really did accelerate that plant. I enjoyed that very much.
But the BudBox you're talking about also gets to, I mean, it uses the DWC technique, but it's also got a dripper at the top as well. So you're getting the benefit of the water going through the media and also pulling in oxygen through it as well.
By the time we were producing chilies, that dripper never got turned off once because the plant was just sucking the life out of the water mains board. We was practically getting a water board to come out and do a direct feed. It was crazy.
To give the listeners some sort of idea of scale as well, we potted up, so to speak, and we took it out the system and put it into soil next door. And it used a 65-litre pot. 85-litre pot it went into.
That's a beast.
Full of soil, and that was just gives you some idea of how big the pot needed to be to hold these roots and hold the plant stable.
Yeah.
And that was all being supported by one BudBox.
Excellent.
Well, that's it. It's good to know. And the thing is, anybody that walks in and sees that, they're then sold on it because they can see exactly what it does, and that's why we like, you know, we've had a bit of a laugh and Bill's giving you these things, but it works.
It's amazing how I make any money. At all. Don't let Glyn listen to that.
I know, how do we, because all we do is seem to play with this stuff. Do we do anywhere? Have we been doing anywhere?
Don't we?
Who's minding the other shop? Oh.
Moving on to the Amazon system.
Okay, Craig.
I have to say, this is something that I haven't actually used myself.
I haven't
done any trials on. So
I think in some ways it does scare people because it's got very little media. You're talking like a very small mesh pot. It can't be more than a handful of clay pebbles.
Yeah.
And people don't see how it can possibly hold the plant, what happens with the roots. But I can tell you, it's the quickest way to move a plant forward. We've done a plant last year. It grew 7 foot in 5 weeks on tomatoes. It was absolutely... You know,
in all fairness, we should have really had to go with this system because it's the big brother of the extreme. It's the next stage on. So we've been doing the extreme, but we haven't been completing the journey with the Amazon.
Yeah.
So, in all fairness, we can't really give a comment because we haven't used it. But if it's anything to go like the extreme,
it's the same principle. It's got a load of access to oxygen, you know, and that's what helps speed up the growth. The sprayer's going 24/7 again, so it's always got access to the feed that it needs, and it's just a case of topping it up. You know, making sure that it's got enough in that reservoir, and it does grow really quickly, and that's been the biggest benefit. And to compare it to the extreme, I mean, it's a scaled up version almost, and that's the ideal way to use it. You go from your extreme into the Amazon and away you go. And you know, if people wanted to see it in action, you know, we've got a place in Barnsley where it's going most times of the year. They can always come up and have a look at that. You know, we're happy to show them.
We grow tobacco in it, and we get fantastic 8-foot trees out of tobacco out of the Amazon. It is an explosive system.
There's some pictures we can show you. They're absolutely massive.
The tobacco plant's an amazing plant, isn't it? I think for people that are just interested in gardening in general, obviously if you're a smoker and you wanted to grow your own tobacco, dry it and cure it, it's obviously the best plant for you to grow. But if you just like growing plants, this tobacco plant is probably the most, in my opinion, one of the most unbelievable plants I've ever grown. Some of them have been...
Its resilience as well is unbelievable. I spent a long time with this plant. I spent 18 months, and as well as my team as well. And wow, wow. Basically, you could water this plant and then just pick it up out of its pot and throw it on the floor, literally. Then come back 10 days later, whilst it's been sitting out in 28 degrees sun, and it will look like death. You'll pick that plant up, put it back in its pot, and put 10 litres of water over it with some nutrients, and you'll watch some amazing things become. The plant will regenerate itself, and then once you adhere to it a bit further, it will bring itself back to full pristine condition, providing you look after it. We had this system in an IWS stroke system, and it was just phenomenal. It was a pleasure to grow. I enjoyed the whole 18 months of it, and it was lovely. And then we were growing a variety of species as well, 20 different species, and we had some produce from the end. And I know my dad, he's a big Golden Virginia fan.
I've not heard that for ages.
Golden Virginia. But he was saying to me, son, you know what? It tastes a bit funny though. So I don't know whether we nailed it right, but the journey of growing the plants was pretty good.
I think the whole dry and curing process of the tobacco plant is just as important as the growing. I think that's maybe where we came a bit unstuck, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Because I gave some as well to one member in my family, and he didn't thank me.
No. Yeah, I can remember that one. I think we nearly killed him, didn't we? Poisoned them.
Yeah. But lovely plants.
One of the things with the Amazon is you can switch lids as well. So you know there's various combinations of lids that you can use. It's easily transplantable from the extreme. So we have a twin Amazon, which is a bigger reservoir tank, or the single Amazon. You can do, I don't know, for example, you can have 4 large plants in one in each section of the single Amazon, or you can change that to a 16 or a 32 with smaller plants. So it's quite a flexible system. Tips. Best tip for it is when you transplant into it, use a bit of black and white to cover the hole. If you're not using caps, just make sure you're not getting any light going into that chamber. But yeah, you'll get explosive growth from an Amazon. Yeah. One of the things we've done to improve the system over the last 12 months is we've now got access holes in the centre of each of the squares within the lid of the system. So one of the things people were complaining about was it was very difficult to get into the chamber if there was a problem with a blockage or if one of the spinners wasn't correctly delivering the water properly. Now you've got a red cap that you can lift, get access to the chamber, manage inside. So if you've got any root blockages and things like that.
That's what I've always found very good about yourselves as a company. You actually listen to what a customer says. So, you know, if you bring out a version of a system and you have a few customers saying, oh, I didn't want the tap on the back, I wanted the tap on the front. The next system comes out, you change the tap around, and I like that. I take my hat off to you for that, because there's a lot of companies and they build things because they think it's the way it should be, and unfortunately it's not. It doesn't work, and then the growers are just having to do things so this system works. You actually take on board what the consumer needs, and I like that. I appreciate that in a company.
It's nice of you to say.
Yeah, I mean, that's how we've managed to, not just keep going for
but evolve
40 years, but
and get better.
Yeah, exactly.
Otherwise, if we didn't do that, we'd still be driving around with square wheels.
Yeah.
We would still be doing that, wouldn't we? If we didn't try anything new. So that's a little thing a little dig at all of our customers who are still
using square wheels.
Just using pots.
Yeah. All right. Before we round up, there's quite a few systems, if I'm honest, but we're not going to touch on all until, like I said, after Christmas. We won't go without a mention of the IWS though. So
we couldn't do that.
We couldn't, could we?
No.
Would you say, I might be wrong, you correct me, would you say it's one of your flagship system products?
Of course, yeah. The IWS came over to us when we purchased DGS back in 2011. It's gone from strength to strength and developed further. There's various parts of the IWS range, so we start with a basic hand watering system which will take away any runoff. So you can have a brain bucket that'll take your runoff away from you and dump it away from you. So again, if you're moving a customer from pots into something a bit more modular, which you can manage, you're still doing the hand watering, but it'll manage the waste for you. We've then got a dripper system. So again, you can go from a Wilmer, which will have up to 20 pots. You can then go into a dripper IWS, which will run 48 to 80 pots, depending on how big your reservoir is. From there, you've then got the DWC, which we touched on earlier. And we've got 2 variants of the DWC. We've just got a normal DWC where you send the water out, it stays out all the time, and
it's almost like a modular oxypot, isn't it, in some ways?
That's a good way of explaining it, yeah. So you've got an earth stone in each one of those pots, again up to 48 pots on it. But then we've got the RDWC, which we launched last year, so a recirculating deep water culture system. And again, we've got variants of that as well. And then finally, the flagship of the IWS
Well, I was waiting for this one. My category.
I'll run up to the wicket,
is the flood and drain.
Flood and drain. Couldn't wait for you to mention that. Because I personally love the system. Have loved the system for a long time. A lot of customers love the system. Really good system. Really good results.
What is it that customers like in particular about it? Because we have our reasons. It's just interesting because we've got so many guys on it.
To be honest, a lot of them find success with it. Makes their job or chore, as some of them like to put it, a lot easier. They can regulate different feed times and stuff like that. They can use different types of media within it as well. It's very similar to what because they look at it and they see these pots, these modular pots, and they can attach them with a piece of piping, and then you just attach this brain pot and this big tank. So then you just walk into your room and fill your big tank with your bits of nutrients, and then you input how many times you'd like it to feed, and sit back and watch it go. And that appeals to customers because in the room it looks like just a load of pots, the way they normally do what they're doing, connected with a bit of piping. Simple. Now, if you go to a customer, here's this big plastic thing with all these pipes underneath, they can't understand it, but IWS really relates to a customer. It looks really similar. The only thing they have to get their head around is how many times do I set my feet? And how much additives or nutrients do I have to put in the tank, because it's a lot more in one place. But once they get to grips with that, they're sorted for life. And we'll see them, they'll start off with an 8 pot. They'll be in 3 weeks later for the 48 pot system. And then that's them, they're off. You know, it's a nice journey with our IWS customers, because a lot of them are a bit scared at the beginning. They are a bit scared.
They start off in a small way and then they scale up as they go.
But then when you see them come back going, thank you. What have I been doing for 5 years? And we're like, you know, we try and tell you, we try and educate our customers as much as you can, but obviously a lot of the time the customers are thinking, is this shop like every other shop? And they're just going to sell me as much crap as I can. No, we're not. We're there to give you information, accurate information, and for you guys to make a decision for yourselves. But just so happens that IWS, I personally love it.
Well, again, it's following on from the Wilmer personal grower. You're taking a lot of the headache out of it for the customer. You know, the system is in control for you. And it's doing what, you know, you don't want to go around hand watering 48 plants.
Plus, there's little things as well that's, you know, beneficial even. So you're doing all them pots and you're hand watering. With the IWS, particularly the Pro, they're on stands anyway, it's draining out, it's making sure that your roots aren't sitting in any excess water for any time, which you would be in, you know, hand watering. So it takes that headache away from you as well. So you're getting a healthier plant as well as making it easier.
One thing I need to mention, being a grower and shop owner and whatever you want to put in that mix, the success rate on IWS is high, very perfect, is great. So, because I know people get worried, that's why I've mentioned this, is because people get scared about taking the power from them and placing it in a load of plastic components with some sort of timer thing on it. It can be a bit daunting to them. However, IWS is phenomenal, is a really, really, really good piece of equipment.
Well, one of the things that's important from us as a wholesaler, because we don't get this opportunity to speak to the public very often, we have to use yourself and Stephen as conduits for us. So to know that you've used the system and that you've got the results from it, and we're confident then in, you can see the end users will come to you and ask for advice, and you know, it makes us very happy about that.
Well, a top tip from me for the listeners is, and I tell this to every customer.
I was just about to do a top tip then as well.
You have your top tip
in
a minute.
Go on.
The customers that have gone from hand feeding and are looking to take the next step into using a system, the mistake that they'll make is they'll think that the system is literally going to do all the work for them. And I always say to the customers that are buying these systems, if you apply a hand feeder's mentality to the system, then you're going to get exceptional results.
Oh my God, you will do very, very well.
And what I mean by that is that if you spend the same amount of time, you don't have to, what you're going to do is you're going to have a lot of free time where you're not watering your plants. So with that free time, spend that inspecting the plant, seeing for pest, disease, nutrient deficiencies.
What about just going down the pub and watching a match and forgetting about your plants, though?
You need to get out more, Steve.
You're going to have a lower grade plant at the end of that.
But you can do that. And the reason why I said that is not to take anything away from Stephen. But what Stephen's point is there is, if you do remove that time and fill it with another activity, and basically you're stealing your time from your new system that you bought. If you don't bother to put that time in, then you won't do well at all.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean you have to sit there and do anything. You just need to be proactive and be within your room and monitoring what the system's doing and how it's developing and growing.
One of the things I like about, I mean, it's only a small tip, and I'm sure lots of people do it, but with the IWS, when they're starting off in there, plants are organic animals. You know, they're organic, not animals, but they're organic. They like to be together.
Yeah.
In the IWS, you can move them all nice and close to each other.
Yeah.
And as they grow bigger,
Yeah.
you can give them a bit more space.
Yeah.
And you can move it out. They're not rigid as to where it needs to be because you're working on pine. And your plants love that. Sorry, Thomas.
Yeah, and I was just going to go over that point that Bill made, because that is a key point to what Bill's just made, because he's talking about microclimate there. He's talking about the microclimate within the plants. So as we always go on about humidity, the reason, the point that Bill's picked up on there is because that group of plants together has created a microclimate of perfect humidity. So the accelerated growth is just phenomenal, along with the IWS. So once that plant is established to a decent size, then you, as you say, because the system's movable, you can move them open and then they can take up the next stage in their life.
Good tip, I like that.
I like that, Bill. Thank you. Hold on, one more tip.
Top tip from the team, man.
Because this system is a very good system, and I bloody love it. So I want to tell you about silicon, and if you don't use silicon in this system, you are behind on the game. Let me tell you.
Your top tip,
A silicon that I do use with it that's phenomenal is BudLink. That's a personal silicon that I use, and I recommend it with this system all of the time. The reason why, not just for me to do extra sales, that as well, but okay. Listen, if you use bamboo canes or you use string and stuff to tie up your plants when they start becoming heavy with fruits, that's because the IWS system is that good at what it does. You will be getting big, heavy fruits. If you use silicon, you do not need to use bamboo canes and string to tie your plants up, because you will make the cell structure of your plant that strong, the plant will stand and hold its fruits.
Good tip.
But not only that, it will actually point towards the sun, i.e. the light, and not be hanging all over the floor and cannot actually do its proper job. So if your plants are that heavy with its fruit and is falling on the floor, you're also diminishing the overall crop yield, because the plant is no longer in its perfect environment. So take that on board. Top tip, silicon with the IWS, watch it.
Excellent, good tip. I like that. Before we wrap it up, is there anything else that you would like to talk about?
No, I think we've covered a lot of things today in a short time.
It'd be nice to come back again and pick up on anything, and if you've got any,
if we're invited,
that's it. We might want our welcome,
definitely.
but yeah.
Our journey's come a long way, hasn't it, Bill? It's come a
Can
long
we talk
way.
about that journey? Because I know that this is something that's very important.
It's very prominent to me, and I've mentioned it to a lot of people, Bill. I have a respect for yourself, because me and Bill, we met a long time ago when I first opened my shop, and the reason how I got to know Bill is because the little get wouldn't let me have an account with his store, and I was a new person, and I thought I wanted to take over the world as we do at NPK, and I was a bit disheartened because I knew I'd heard of Nutriculture, and the reason why I'd heard of Nutriculture because I was a grower and I was using all of Nutriculture's products, and then lo and behold, I want to have a shop so I can help other growers, because I was absolutely cheesed off with the state of shops at the moment. They're absolutely appalling, some of them. So that's what I wanted to do. So I applied to Nutriculture and they declined me. So I sat in my office thinking, no, I need Wilmer systems and I need all of the Nutriculture stuff that they supply. So I thought, what am I going to do? Who's in charge of this company? And I find Bill. And I had a phone call with Bill and I said, listen, I want to bring something new to the industry. Please, can you just come and maybe we could have a talk? And Bill said, you know what, son? I'll come out and we'll have an interview. I'll have a speak with you. I can't promise you nothing, but I'll come and have a talk with you. And the rest's history. Thank you very much, Bill.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that. Excellent, thank you.
I'm glad we made
and
that
I never forget that. I never forget that because loyalty's key to me.
Well, it was enthusiasm for the subject, and
Yeah.
you know, you just came across. The
And
right
look where
way.
we are now,
Look
eh?
where we are now.
Yeah, look where we are, onwards and upwards.
Very good. That was a really nice podcast.
I was going to start crying then.
I've got a tear in my eye as well.
It's been very emotional.
Give us a kiss, Steve.
We're going to end the podcast here before it gets any more wrong.
Well, Bill, Craig, thank you very much.
you
No,
very
thanks
much.
for having us.
Thanks very much for having us.
Yeah, we're going to be back after. We'll be back next week anyway
Yeah.
with more podcasts. But we're going to be back with Nutriculture after the new year, and we're going into a lot more depth on each individual system. And then, so if you've got any questions, you've got up until the new year to get them in there. If there's anything that you want to ask Nutriculture, Bill and Craig, get them into us. Websites. This is you, Craig.
It's
what have you got?
nutsystems.co.uk. That is where you're going to find all the information that you're going to need on any of our hydro systems, videos, tips, techniques, how to put them together. Absolutely every bit of information is on there. And then nutriculture.co.uk for any of the other Nutriculture family of products, so your Rhinos, your Green Powers and things like that. So if you need any information about those, that's where you go for them.
Excellent. And you're very active on Twitter as well. Which I've noticed that because I make lots of tweets about 7 or 8 o'clock
Lots
at
of
night.
tweets.
And the only person that ever replies to me or retweets is Nutriculture. So is that would that be
That's
yourself?
me. That's
good
that's
stuff.
me.
Working late at night.
Well, just one quick thing before we go. Any viewers or listeners or any, because we haven't got viewers because we're not on the telly yet, but any listeners, anybody out there who doubts anything that we said, wants to test anything we said, wants to argue with us, we love it. So get in contact with us.
Yeah.
Or if they want a product and test it against any products, get in contact and give us a call.
Good stuff.
And if there's any retailers listening to this, I'm sure I haven't given Thomas half the things that he's saying I've given him.
No, he hasn't given me nothing.
Well, you've been listening to NPK Live with myself and Thomas, Bill and Craig. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.